Hello, my name is Alex, and I matched with Stanford last year through the QuestBridge National Match program, which means I got a full ride, and this is part 2 in my QuestBridge National Match series. And today I wanted to take the time to share my essays with a little bit of advice sprinkled in. And in case you have no clue what I'm talking about in terms of the QuestBridge National Match program, no worries, because if you're applying through the Common App, I can still help you because I'm going to show my Stanford supplement essays that every student who's applying to Stanford must submit. So in case you want to skip to that part of the video, the timestamp will be right here. Otherwise, I recommend sticking around for the full video. So let's get started. Before we get started, there are two things I want to go over. Number one, if you want to know more information about the QuestBridge National Match program, check out part 1, which is linked up here. In that video, I talk about everything you need to know about the program, such as criteria, different stages of the program, and how I rank schools. Number 2, I wanted to give you an outline of all the essays I had to write in total, starting with the QuestBridge National Match program. I had to write about 7 really short essays that were about 35 words each, followed by 2 short essays, 1 long essay, 1 biological essay, and 1 optional additional information essay. Yeah, I think I got all of them. Then for my Stanford supplements, I had to write about 5 short essays, followed by 1 letter to my future roommate, which was really fun, and I'm looking forward to sharing that one with you guys. Anyways, enough yada yada yada. Let's get into my QuestBridge biological essay. Now, before I share my essay, I want to preface by saying that by no means do you have to write an essay with the same general topic as mine or with the same structure, and I highly recommend not doing so. I'm sharing my essays with the goal that it will aid some of you in the brainstorming process by showing you one way that you can approach answering these prompts. That being said, I still highly encourage that you do more research and read more essays and watch more videos so that you can get even more ideas. Also, every essay I read today will be inside of a Google Doc that I'll leave in the description so you can take your time with them. You're welcome. Now we can move on to my biological essay, starting with the prompt. We are interested in learning more about you and the context in which you have grown up, formed your aspirations, and accomplished your academic successes. Please describe the factors and challenges that have most shaped your personal life and aspirations. How have these factors helped you to grow? Now the essay. Many may argue the immigrant experience is that of financial difficulty and the pursuit of a better life, and ours was not much different. My father worked 2 jobs and my mother worked 1 for over 10 years so they could achieve their dream of opening a grocery store. Growing up, I remember hearing of my parents' dream and the name for the store, La Centroamericana. 3 years after hearing the first mention of the store, my parents took a risk and invested time and money into their dream. In May of 2011, La Centroamericana opened its doors, and with it 9 years of my childhood. Their work ethic has inspired me to be diligent in my work in school and out, and I have spent time in the summer and on weekends ever since, helping throw boxes away or restock shelves until I eventually started working there part-time. Today, I believe the work I've done at the store and my interactions with customers have made me responsible, patient, and diligent. Although my work at the store has become repetitive over the years, my interactions with customers have taught me a key lesson about life. I learned the ability to smile and be cheerful even when I feel down, which has allowed me to keep my head raised high and persevere even when I struggle. For example, a struggle of mine early on in high school was balancing my time between the store, homework, and extracurriculars. My weekends were almost always spent at the store because they were the busiest days. Long weekends at the store were followed by hours of schoolwork at home. I was quickly forced to adjust to having multiple responsibilities, and in response, I developed a system of time management that involved giving myself regular short breaks to not mentally overload myself. These breaks helped me mentally refresh myself and maintain my mental health. Nonetheless, I believe this struggle is important to experience early in my life because it is a reality of the real world. None of us are ever sure we will have an easy path to achieve our dreams, and none of us are aware of all the challenges. For example, at the store, angry customers and technical problems with our equipment could cause hours of frustration. Although these problems cause me anxiety, years of experience have taught me to keep a level head and be patient. At school, I applied the same frame of mind. A week of school could create hours of homework and collaborative projects on top of my responsibilities at work. When the amount of work I accumulate becomes excessive, I have to rely on my perseverance, breaks, and my ability to be cheerful. In addition, one of my parents' intentions with the store was to create an environment for my siblings and I to learn about the real world. My time there has taught me how to talk to and manage people, and most importantly, it has given me an example of where my life could head in the future. At times, I found myself thinking the work there was menial and that I did not want a similar job in my adulthood. However, my parents wanted me to question it because they believed that my experience at the store, working hours doing basic things, would inspire me to do better in school and strive for a better future. After all, the immigrant experience in the US is typically one that demands ambition, in part because Latinos experience many struggles. Growing up, I noticed in the store and at school that Latinos were looked down upon by various groups in our community. We were thought of as being weak economically and lacking the skills to succeed in the US. At the store, I could observe that Latinos typically worked menial labor jobs because their limited knowledge of 21st century skills and English allowed them no other route. Knowing that I had an opportunity to go beyond menial opportunities motivates me to work harder in school because I am aware that others would trade everything they have for an opportunity to pursue their dreams in this country. I am grateful to my parents for allowing me to grow up at the store because seeing life through the perspective of Latinos, a group of people that typically struggle in the US, inspires me not to be another Latino. Rather, I want to break the stereotypes which surround Latinos in this country. My dream of pursuing a degree in computer science is attached to representing the capacities of Latinos. I am tremendously proud to call myself a Latino, and more specifically a Salvadoran, and I want to pursue my dream while waving my flag everywhere I go. Whew, I need to breathe. Dang, I said Latino like 30 times in that last paragraph, so clearly this essay is not perfect, and there were many repetitive points that I should have fixed, but it worked. On a serious note, there were many things that I could have worked on, and I could have spotted had I actually had someone look over my essays. Yeah, you should probably do that. Everyone and their mother is going to tell you that you should have your essays looked over, and they're right. The only reason I didn't do it this way was because I didn't want any outside influences to change my final essay. Well, essays. Of course, since I've been down that road, I don't recommend it at all. In fact, I think you should get at least 2 people to look over it. That's what worked for some of my friends, because it'll mean that you will be able to catch a lot of the mistakes that distract the reader from understanding your message. Oh, and a reminder, if you have any questions so far or throughout the course of the video, don't hesitate to leave them down below. Now let's move on to my long essay and one short essay. I'm going to start with the short essay, and I'm only going to read one of the 2 because I don't want this video to be super long. Also, for the 7 really short 35-word essays, I'm not going to read any of those, but they will be in the Google Doc. So now let's start with the prompt of the short essay. If you could meet a character from a book or a historical figure, who would it be and what would you ask them? Now the essay. Growing up, I always wondered what gave the greatest names in civil rights history the willpower and determination to fight against injustices when their actions created backlashes greater than any injustice they fought against. Among these names is Cesar Chavez, who protested in favor of Latino farm workers in California. If I were given the opportunity to ask him any question, it would focus on why he had a relentless belief that the boycotts and hunger strikes would work, especially when the protests meant those participating may lose their jobs or would be unable to provide food for their families that day. I anticipate he would say something along the lines of, "I did not do it alone," or "I wanted changes to be made," yet they would fail to explain the state of mind that someone requires to sacrifice themselves and organize movements to combat injustice despite creating additional outrage. He may be unable to articulate the exact reasons, but I firmly believe the same level of perseverance can be achieved by anyone, assuming we are willing to sacrifice ourselves for the general good, unaware if we will be able to see all the progress made, like in Cesar's case. I had forgotten about this essay, and I really liked writing it, partially because I was in like a flow state where everything just seemed to go and connect that day really well. But anyways, we should move on to the long essay prompt. Describe an experience that caused you to change your perspective and or opinion. Oof, this is an open-ended one. It's tough, but let's see how I did. 10 years ago, I had the opportunity to travel to my parents' birth country, El Salvador. Although I was very young, 8 years old, the trip taught me to respectfully treat others despite key differences between them and myself. Prior to the trip, my father would regularly expose me to Salvadoran news channels on weekends. The news channels described a country proliferated by corruption, violence, and poverty. In anticipation of the trip, I developed a mental version of El Salvador, which only considered these factors. The children, I imagined, were dirty, smeared with dirt, and wore ragged clothes. My upbringing in the U.S. forced me to think that a small, corruption-ridden country would lack the ability to take care of their children. Mentally, I developed a human that resembled me in skin color and nothing else. I reasoned that because the children did not have access to the same food, water, or shelter as me, they were foreign. Upon arrival, this version of El Salvador was quickly undone, as children were in fact not thin to the bone and in rags. However, I firmly believe these children were still different from me because their clothing still reflected the poverty of the country. Their clothes were worn and mismatched, and the children were relatively thin. Although it was not the level of poverty I had anticipated, it was my first experience with a deeper level of poverty. To clarify, I was not unfamiliar with the idea of poverty. I grew up in a household where my father worked 2 jobs and my mother worked 1. Food and shelter were never an issue. However, we were limited in our ability to eat out or go to places of entertainment. We had significant economic constraints, and with the opening of our grocery store, this improved mildly. The people of El Salvador, however, were in a deeper state of poverty. I failed to transition my mind to be open-minded and respectful of the differences between both countries. I treated others in El Salvador the same way I would treat anyone back home, but my tone of voice, vocabulary, and actions did not take into consideration the differences in culture between both countries. In all fairness, my young age did not aid me in considering how my upbringing in the US would impact my culture and views in the world in comparison to someone who was brought up in El Salvador. Reflecting on the trip, I acknowledge my perspective of the world was small scale. My experiences with poverty and culture are significant to my story, but many others have their own stories that may involve poverty, suffering, and distinct traditions or cultures. Instead of thinking of others who are different than me as foreign, as I did on that trip, I switched to an open-minded and embracing approach. No person should be compared or judged on how different they are from what my culture teaches me is normal. Low-key, I kind of feel weird for writing an essay like this. I'm pretty sure like a month ago I saw a TikTok that talked about how writing about an underdeveloped country and how it shaped your perspective on the world is cliche. Just found it. Take a look.
The Worst Kinds of College Essays, Part 2. The Sanctimonious Savior. My service trip abroad was humbling. Do you have the Wendy's 4 for 4? I asked the children. Who's Wendy? They asked. I was taken aback by my life of privilege.
Even though the topic is corny and probably overused, I still don't think it's an ungenuine response to the prompt, so I think it's pretty decent. Anyways, I want to wrap up the QuestBridge essay section of this video by talking about my number 1 tip when it comes to writing essays for this application, and it's be genuine. I get it, you've probably been told this a million times, but there are still a lot of kids who think that they need to do something really big and have some special story like raising $1,000 or thousands of dollars for charity or something big like that to have success, and well, it's simply not true. In my experience and research, the essays that go the farthest are the ones that talk about the real you and mention growth in some way. So I guess there are 2 tips. Number 1, be genuine, and number 2, show how you grew in some way, shape, or form. Specifically, your character, your attitude towards something, or your perspective on something. In my biological essay, I talk about my perseverance and growth in the context of my family's business. I was genuine by mentioning the store, and I wrote about my growth in that context, but I don't think you're limited to talking about something that affected half your life as the store did in my case. You could easily do something else, such as start a club or organization. I feel like starting an organization can be a lot more impressive, particularly if you're able to explain what motivated you to start it and how you grew as a result of starting it. Schools really like the essays where you talk about an experience and how you grew as a result of it. The only thing that you have to do on your end is figure out an interesting way to explain that. And I know it's super hard to do that, but I'm trying to give you some ideas by sharing some of my essays, so hopefully you'll be better off by the end of the video. And if not, well, no refunds. But now it's time for my Stanford supplements. As mentioned, there are 5 short format essays. I'm going to start with those. I'm only going to read 2, the 2 I like the most, and the rest will be in the Google Doc. The prompt for the first one is, what is the most significant challenge that society faces today? Oh, okay. I believe the exact freedoms of the press have come into question because of increasing sensationalism across all our media sources. Regardless of someone's political orientation, media sources that prioritize clicks or views over the veracity of their reports is inherently dangerous to every citizen because of misinformation. Okay, Alex, I see. Now let's move on to another piece of advice. When you're going to work on your essays is something that you need to plan out as soon as you can. I personally worked on my essays about once or twice weekly for a few hours, and what you are doing with that time is also super important. At first, I spent time brainstorming by writing down topics and following them up with a couple sentences each to see if I could actually develop the idea. And once I did that, I then picked the one idea that was the best out of them, and then I tried to see if I could actually make it into a long format essay. I learned that idea somewhere on TikTok, and I think it can be very effective because you're able to see multiple topics with a little bit of meat and try to figure out if you can actually add more meaningful content to them. I often found out that after writing a really interesting topic down and thinking that it could be really great, that once I start to add those little bits of sentences that I really don't know how to develop that idea too well because I don't have that much meaningful content to add. So this method kind of acts like a filter to take out some of those really interesting ideas that aren't actually going to be that great in an essay format. At the end of the day, the goal should be to narrow it down to one good topic, but a reminder that you really do have to set aside the time and day to work on these essays. Otherwise, you're going to fall behind and you're going to end up rushing, which is not what you want because the quality of your essays is going to decrease. A reminder that you're applying to one of the biggest universities in the country and arguably in the world, so you're going to have to put all your cards on the table, so you're going to have to set aside that time and make the sacrifices. Anyways, I hope that gives you a little bit of insight into how I went about writing my essays. Now let's get into my second short essay prompt. Name one thing you're looking forward to experiencing at Stanford. Now the essay. A peer of mine who attends Stanford described how he could walk into a coffee shop and start a random conversation with an unknown peer and engage in a meaningful conversation. I look forward to experiencing Stanford's collaborative and inclusive environment because I value mental health over academics. I feel like that second sentence does not match up too well, but it is what it is. Next up is my letter to my future roommate, which is Stanford's signature essay. Let's start with the prompt. Virtually all of Stanford's undergraduates live on campus. Write a note to your future roommate that reveals something about you or that will help your roommate and us get to know you better. I do not remember what I wrote for this essay, but I'm low-key kind of scared for what's about to be read, but I guess it is what it is, so let's get started. First of all, how are you doing? As for myself, I would say I'm doing alright for someone who just moved from the Midwest to California. I'm going to be honest in saying that I am someone who is goofy and quirky, and through our time living together, you will witness me dancing and possibly singing, although quite terribly. Oh my god, I actually said that. Along to the last song I happened to have heard that day. However, I don't want you to be concerned. This is my way of dealing with stress and keeping myself refreshed and energized. If anything, I would love if you joined in every once in a while. Having shared a room with my brother for the past 14 years has meant I've grown accustomed to having someone to talk to and share random tidbits of information I gathered along the day. I am someone who's fascinated by details, discussing the way we think. Quite frankly, anything which challenges my way of thinking will fascinate me to the extent of obsession. Although I would love to talk and share such information with the person I live with, I'm not going to force that burden onto you. Anyways, this is my long-winded way of saying that I'm always open to talk when you are feeling vivacious, anxious, or sad. I pride myself on being able to get a smile out of people with my goofiness regardless of their mood. Please help me keep my perfect record. I feel like this is so cringe. I mean, I'm not lying, but still, I can't believe I'm reading this in front of a camera right now. Back to over there. So my goofier side doesn't come across on camera too well because I'm always trying to appear professional and well put together, but once you get to know me, you find out that I'm really energetic, goofy, and jittery all the time. Maybe I should show that side of me a little bit more. Anyways, that concludes the essays for today. If you made it this far, I really appreciate you sticking by. As mentioned, I wanted to do this so you could see one of the ways of approaching the prompts for the essays you're going to be doing later this year. That being said, continue to watch videos and read essays so that the actual topics of your essays improve and the execution as well. My name is Alex. If you have any questions, leave them down below. If you enjoyed, hit the like button and subscribe, and until next time, adios.